Lost in a sea of trust, I never saw the iceberg of betrayal coming. My life, once a harmonious symphony with Samantha, became a mess of lies. How could you? I asked, my voice a mix of disbelief and anger as Samantha's silence spoke volumes. Secrets and lies wove a dark tapestry, destroying the love we once knew. This is my tale of betrayal and search for truth. It took a breakup and a 6-year-old kid to make me see what I'd been avoiding. I didn't want to face it. I'd looked away as long as I could, but then it was right there. We were saying goodbye to my uncle, who passed because his heart gave out, and the 6-year-old was my son, Ben. We were at my brother's place the day after saying goodbye, getting ready to head back. The bags were all packed and in the car. I was getting Ben in his seat. "Want your shoes off, buddy?" I asked him. I knew what he'd say, but I loved hearing his answer. "Yes, please," he said clearly and seriously. I smiled and started taking off his tiny shoes. I didn't need to ask about the socks. He always wanted them off. It had to be from my side. Barefoot is better for me too than hot, tight shoes. With his socks off, he wiggled his toes, happy. I tickled his feet. He was ready for it, watching me, ready to giggle and kick, pretending to get away from my tickles, but he wouldn't be happy if I didn't do it. It was our fun game, something we both loved. I realized we were doing this more these days, my little boy, and I loved our time together. Not the same with my wife, Megan, though. Before I could think more, my sweet boy pulled me back. "Daddy," Ben asked. I was leaning over him, putting his shoes next to him. I tucked each sock into its shoe and pushed them into the seat so they'd stay put. "What's wrong, buddy?" I asked softly. When he didn't speak right away, I looked into his eyes. "Why doesn't Mommy love us anymore?" he asked simply. I was shocked. I looked at my little one, lost for words. "Honey, your mommy loves us a lot. Really," I said slowly, "and she loves you the most in the whole world." For a short time, I saw a light in his eyes, but then it vanished. "But she didn't come with us to say bye to Uncle Joe," he said with a sad voice. I had no good answer, only what Megan had told me. "She had work, sweetie." I thought about telling him about the big job at the place where my wife worked and how it took all her time, but that would be too much for a 6-year-old to understand. I was silent for a bit. "Mommy will be there when we get back, my love, waiting for you." "Does she have to work at night too?" Ben asked. I started to say no. Her mom went out at night with friends. Too much to explain, but again, it would make Ben ask more than I could answer. "No, my boy," I said. "I think Mommy's almost done with working so much. Then she'll have a lot more time for you and me." I suddenly wanted to end this talk. It was too hard. I clicked the last buckle on the car seat, gave my precious son a kiss, and patted his arm before shutting the door. 20 minutes later, he was asleep in the back seat as I drove down the highway. My son slept, but my mind was awake. I kept thinking about his sad words. If a 6-year-old noticed it, it wasn't just me. That's what my wife suggested last time I asked why she was out with her friends so much. The sun was almost down when we got home. My wife, Megan, was indeed there. Ben ran upstairs, full of joy and lots to tell his mom about all the cousins he saw at my folks'. I followed, my mind stuck on gloomy thoughts from our ride home. Why was my wife always at work or out with her friends? I found Megan by her mirror, doing her makeup in her underwear. She stood to give me a quick kiss, and lo, I realized I couldn't recall the last time she kissed me deeply or hugged me tight to show her love. I sat on our bed and watched as Ben tried to chat with her, but Mom didn't seem to listen, and soon our little boy left for his room, silent. Megan kept on with her makeup, focused on getting it perfect. "What's up, Megan?" I tried to ask without showing my upset. My stomach knotted, and I felt hot. Catching my breath was hard. "What do you mean?" she answered, still working on her eyes. She saw I was bothered, but didn't stop with her makeup. "We've been home just 10 minutes, I said, voice rough, "and you're heading out again." She paused on her lash brush, looking annoyed. "Babe, you know I meet the girls on Saturdays." She spoke as if tired. I didn't like how she sounded or what it meant. "Actually," I said with a hint of spite, "you're out with them Sundays, some Mondays, almost every Thursday, and nearly every Saturday for happy hour." Sometimes they turned into one long, hard night. Ben went off quiet after his mom had shut him out and was in his room, door shut. I heard the sounds of one of his toys start to play a tune. Getting up, I shut the bedroom door and turned to see Megan also up and staring at me, no look on her face. Moving quick, I got close to her and grabbed both her hands in mine. I held them tight to my chest. "Megan," I said slow, trying to keep my voice calm. I didn't want it to break now. "Today, Ben asked me why you didn't love us anymore, and Megan, I have to ask too." It looked like Megan's eyes got a bit narrow, then it showed I stepped into a no-go zone. I didn't stop and kept going. Do you still love me?" I asked my wife of 7 years. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she let go of a clear upset and leaned into me. "Of course, dear," she said soft. "I love you more now than when we got married." I felt so happy I thought I'd burst. My stomach was still in knots, but I tried to calm down. She was happy, but not now. "Then stay home tonight, dear," I said, pushing away my doubts. I didn't let my voice sound begging. Megan sighed, touching me and patting my chest. "We can put Ben to bed early," I said. "Turn down the lights and bring out that wine we've been saving. And you can wear that black lace top I got you for Christmas. How about that?" Oddly, her body had seemed into my idea until I said that. Then she got stiff and tried to step back. I kept hold of her wrists and didn't let her go far. "Megan," I said on purpose, "are you seeing someone else?" I watched her close as I spoke, and there it was. I saw a quick shift deep in her eyes and a tiny tince at the edge of her eyes. Then they were gone. They were gone in a flash, but I saw them. I heard a sharp breath as she took in air fast. What stayed was a fast beat I felt under my fingers. I was holding her wrists, and the tips of my first 2 fingers were on her main bloodlines. It was as good as any lie test. I knew then. "Don't be silly," my wife said. "Honey, I could only love you. You know that." She moved closer, put her head on my shoulder, and breathed softly on my neck, giving me small kisses. But her head didn't press down enough to mess up her hair. Did Megan feel the cold wave going through me? Megan tapped my arms and stepped back, looking at the clock by the bed. "I'm late," she said. "I promised my friends I wouldn't be again, and I need to go, but maybe tomorrow night?" She asked softly. "Megan, we need time together," I said, letting my annoyance show. "Tell your friends another time, and stay with me and our kid. How about that?" "Please," I tried. She moved to her closet, took out a short skirt. "I can't let my friends down," she said. "Why would you do that?" she snapped. "Why would you let me and your kid down?" I shot back. "Don't we matter to you?" My wife's eyes got sharp as she got mad like me. "Tomorrow," she yelled. "Damn it. I need my own time without you always there and making me feel trapped. I'm not your slave." We fought more. She said she was her own person in this marriage. I told her I couldn't boss her around, that she was free to relax and have fun after a rough day at work. I reminded her that I always let her do her thing, like when she went back to work after our baby was born. I was all for it, even though I made enough cash for us. I was proud of her job at the marketing firm, but I didn't get why her nights out were more important than us. I got a bit sharp about her friends, which made her more upset. She asked if I was accusing her of something. Then I walked out. I was too angry and didn't want to say something I'd regret, so I cooled off on the living room couch. I was angry, thinking of stopping her from leaving, but I knew I couldn't. When she came down, we stared at each other. She looked ready to fight, and me, I felt bad. "Megan," I said, my voice coming out deep and shaky. She paused like she might stay, then she left. "Megan," I called out again, stronger. "I love you. Please don't do this to me and Ben." Megan looked back at me, her face totally devoid of any expression. Then she stepped through the door and closed it decisively behind her. Ben came running down the stairs and into the foyer. He opened the outside door and watched as the headlights of his mother's Toyota disappeared down the street. Without saying a word, he shut the door and walked quickly over to the couch. I knew that walk. The hardwood floor felt so cold he couldn't stand it. He jumped on the couch near me, looking at the door, wishing his mom would come back. I looked too. Then Ben got on my lap, and we hugged a lot before I took him to the kitchen to make some sandwiches. The weekend was cold and hard between Megan and me. She came back late at night and was so ill from drinking that any small sound hurt her. After she was mean for a bit, Ben and I left for the park, not coming back till after dinner. Megan didn't like that. She yelled at me when Ben and I returned, saying I was bad for leaving her. I listened for a bit, then had enough. I told her it was her fault for leaving her kid and going out. I said she must get used to the idea of Ben and me having fun without her and deal with it. I was clear, telling her to be nice or be quiet. I had never talked to her like that, which shocked Megan. She was quiet and nicer to Ben that night, softening up. Later, I tried to get closer, but Megan felt sick and had to stop. I tried again on Sunday, but Megan didn't respond, so I stopped and lay there, angry. After some time, I went to shower, hoping it would calm me down enough to sleep. It only helped a little. Monday morning, I left home before Megan woke up. It was rare for me, mainly because it meant Megan had to wake Ben, get him ready, feed him, and take him to daycare. My wife didn't like that unless she was all set up. It made her more than 25 minutes late for work. I wasn't feeling like making things easy for Megan that day. Before leaving that morning, I went down to the basement, opened a locker that looked like it was just for random tools, and hit a switch that turned on a tiny machine that would tape every call made from our home phone. A second switch turned on a thing that would catch any cell calls made close within 100 feet. It wasn't exactly legal, but no one knew about it. I wouldn't use the caught info in court or anything. We already had cameras in almost every room. After I watched a show on TV about how they solved a murder with video from inside a house, I put them all over. Another reason was to watch any babysitters Megan and I got to watch our kid, as well as the cleaner who came in twice a week. We trusted the cleaner and also the teen girls we got to babysit for a bit on those nights Megan and I went out. But to trust and check felt right to me. We hadn't needed a babysitter in months. I wondered if the pricey camera system was worth it. I drove inside the big fence with sharp wire on top around the new place and to the office on the other side. The fence and sharp wire went up when we got our first big job from the State Department 3 years back. After that, they came back twice for more deals, small, but they made us more money. I pulled into a big parking spot and turned off the car. I sat still, trying to decide. I felt like Megan was hiding something, but my head said I had no real proof. My heart raced and I breathed in fast, but that wasn't enough to be sure. I saw guilt in her eyes, but maybe it was for something else, something only a bit related to what ID asked her. I hoped so. The logo in front of my car was covered, and it snapped me out of my thoughts. I lifted my head and said hi to Bill Carson, one of my first hires. Opening the door, I said a quick hello and got my tablet and briefcase from the back seat before going in. I looked at the bright logo. That's my business. I'm John Miller, 34, CEO and boss of a small company that began as a toolmaker 9 years ago. We found our spot making move and turn mounts for home security cameras. Working hard to sell, we found detective firms that needed good spying gear. Over time, we built a strong group of clients who trusted us for high-quality remote control mounts. 7 years back, we bought a small firm that made top-notch color cameras with great zoom. The whole thing, with a strong broadcaster and a separate receiver that could hook up to any TV, was tinier than a lattice lipstick. Now, my small company had it all, and we started selling our stuff all over the region and planned to sell online. Then we took in a couple of detective firms and merged them into one part we named Info and Watch Partners. In a year, we had set up shop in 2 more cities. Miller Technologies was doing great, staying under the radar. In my office, I signed papers my secretary, a kind of task boss, gave me without looking them over. It was a daily thing, and they just needed my sign. I liked to joke with her, calling her radar now and then. She'd snap back, telling me, "Colonel Potter, watch what you're doing." Denise was the heart of our office. Without her, things didn't go as smoothly, and I feared the day she'd tell me she was leaving. To keep her around as long as possible, I paid her as much as the company vice presidents. She was in on that secret. "Denise," I said when she brought my first coffee of the day, "can you get Gary Walters to see me?" She looked confused. "Can I say why?" she asked. I first shook my head, then thought better of it. I felt I owed her some sort of hint. Denise was like a mom to me since the start in our old spot. "Just say I need to be his client," I told her slowly, not meeting her gaze. She paused. "Oh dear," she said softly. "I'm so sorry, John." She sniffed and hurried out. I wondered what she guessed. Gary ran our spy and detective work. Denise understood my need to talk to him as a client was serious. "What's up, John?" Gary popped in. I gestured for him to shut the oak door. I sat there, not looking at anything while he took his first sip of tea from the big cup Denise had made for him when he got here. "Gary," I tried to start talking but had to stop to clear my throat. It was hard to get rid of the tight feeling there, just like the tense muscles in my stomach. They hurt. "Gary, I need to tell you I'm scared Megan's getting into something bad she'll regret later," I said slowly. I was trying to pick my words carefully, not wanting to say I thought she was seeing another man behind my back. "John," he said, looking sad. "Damn, I'm sorry to hear that," he told me. We both took a deep breath. Gary put his mug down on the corner of my desk and just looked at his nails, not saying anything. I didn't know what to say either. "Well," he said after a long, awkward pause. "Well, we've got all we need to check things out for sure. I can get some temp workers to cover for our guys so they can focus on this. Can you tell me Megan's work hours, her cell number, computer logins, credit card info, stuff like that?" I nodded. I started to say no to using our own people for this job instead of hiring outside help, but then I realized Gary wanted the best folks on it. Sighing, I bent to the side of my desk and pulled my briefcase closer. I had spent most of Sunday writing down account numbers and other info I knew I'd need from documents Megan and I had. I had Gary set me up as a paying client of Information and Surveillance Associates. I'd pay that part of my company out of my personal bank account. It was a small thing, but it would keep the account checkers happy. We talked about how to quietly watch my wife to see where she went, who she met, and what they did. I felt silly for doing it, and that was dumb. In addition to the fact that I had understood on Friday night that I had been gradually becoming further distant from Megan's affection, the pain that I had experienced over the past weekend made it imperative that I address this matter honestly. If Megan was not doing anything that could be considered detrimental to the marriage, she would never be aware of what I was doing. There were things that I needed to know. Also, I may find a way to recommend that we seek the assistance of a marriage counselor in order to find a solution to whatever problem she was struggling with. What I wanted to know by midday was whether or not she was engaging in behavior that was inappropriate for a married woman. I needed to know this information right now. People belonging to Gary's group had broken into Megan's Honda, which was parked in the office building in the downtown area where she worked. The task was not tough. I then handed over my key to them because my name was also on the title. Under the driver's seat, they put the sound-powered microphone they had purchased. Anywhere within a radius of 30 meters might pick up the signal that was transmitted by the little transmitter on its own. The microphone was sensitive enough to pick up even a whisper coming from within the well-soundproofed car. A GPS transmitter was situated in a concealed area of the trunk, and it started transmitting the location of the vehicle instantly, exact to within a few feet of the target. The investigation was being handled by 7 of Gary's most talented employees, and he had committed 4 vehicles to the endeavor. In order to guarantee that the rental automobiles and vans would not break down in the event that they were required, our in-house mechanics inspected each and every one of them. One more female, a freelancer with outstanding credentials, submitted her application for a position at Megan's marketing firm, and she was anticipated to begin working there the following week. The advice that Gary gave me was to relax and let him handle everything on his own, because there were previously established protocols in place to deal with situations such as this one. It was in my best interest to refrain from getting involved for the time being. That made me feel even more depressed. What if she was having an affair with another man? In light of the fact that it was such a banal and unremarkable matter, there were already established protocols to deal with it. Also, he informed me that I had an option. They might make an effort to break up a tryst that is about to take place if they learned about it. If my intention was to do so, or if we were to delay our actions in order to acquire a large number of photographs and videos for a divorce proceeding, I made the decision to halt any assignment that they discovered for the time being. I didn't have to give it any thought at all. I desired to have my wife back. After nodding, he inquired, requested that I make every effort to avoid disrupting Megan's routine. When we reached a point where we needed to make a decision, he would let me know. Instead, I informed him that a cusp had already arrived and would soon be leaving. I made a phone call to him from the basement that evening. After listening to the recordings obtained from the mobile phone intercept, we realized that the material taken at that time was not legal. Nonetheless, we did not anticipate using it in court. On the second ring, Gary responded to the call. "Gary, I inquired about it. He was able to pick up on the fact that my voice was thick with emotion very quickly. Holy cow, he said. What has taken place? It was clear that he was concerned about one thing. In an effort to regain control of myself, I took a deep breath and held it for a little period of time. You are aware of the landline and cell phone intercepts that I was required to install when we were building the house, right? I inquired about it. That's true. Despite our best efforts, we were unable to travel to that location today in order to set up the remote monitoring equipment. It's true, Gary. Are you sure that there are only 24 hours in a day? Regardless, Gary, you shouldn't give it any thought at all. Around 6, I have a recording of a conversation that took place between Megan and a man named Mike. I extracted a ragged lung full of air and proceeded with my work. My guess is that you will be able to hear it for yourself as of tomorrow. However, Mike referenced something disturbing when he said that he would soon be screwing Megan's brains out once more. Even though I wanted to cry, I refused to allow tears to gather in my eyes. A ball of ice began to develop in the bottom of my stomach, and I was unable to stop it from happening. I had the sense that my entire body was made of wood, as if I were encircled by tremendous layers of cotton that numbed every sensation. It stung in my chest. I was unable to take a breath. When I found out that Megan was having sexual relations with another man, I was confused. She went outside the marriage for sex, and I couldn't think of any explanation I could have provided her for doing so. I was perplexed as to why she would act in such a manner of betraying both me and our son. Even so, I made an effort to swallow the lump that was in my throat. My statement to you, Gary, is that when I have sufficient control that shifts our attention in the morning of tomorrow, I will give Patrick a call and initiate the process of divorce proceedings for Megan. At this point, I believe that what we need to do is collect as much evidence as we possibly can. Patrick Nolan was a high-powered attorney who was on retainer for Miller Technologies and also served as my personal attorney. I agree with you, John, and I suppose there isn't much else that we can do. I'm just so sorry. I am so sorry that I am at a loss for words to express how sorry I am, Gary said. His empathy helped some. Yeah, I know, Gary, I replied, my voice cracking. Thank you very much, partner, but the credit goes to Megan. It is not the fault of anyone else. On the other hand, I have a young boy who is going to be utterly heartbroken. We are the victims, both he and I. When it comes to Megan's actions, I am completely perplexed. I concentrated my attention on the task at hand. It was not my intention to play the role of the long-suffering husband beyond this moment of sadness. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that we are going to be moving in a different direction, and that change will take effect immediately. I informed him that I will be in the office tomorrow morning. Is that okay with you? Certainly, it is, John, he agreed. Hey, tonight is the time to relax, all right? Don't do anything that you'll come to regret, boss. Sincerely, he stated it. When he warned me not to do anything that could cause my wife physical damage, I knew he was serious. Yes, Gary, I am fine. I informed him that I had run the tape on this intercept 3 hours ago, and that I am already well over that point. I paused for a little moment. I am going to inform you, Gary, that I will not be sleeping with her tonight or any other night in the future. I will have to come up with an excuse, but at the same time, I will not sleep with a woman who stabs me in the back, whether it be literally or symbolically. There are things that I am able to do and others that I am not able to do. No matter how much I know it will complicate the investigation, I just can't do it. The final words I spoke were delivered with a crack in my voice, but Gary did not comment on it. That's okay, Gary said in a reassuring tone. Those who are engaging in activities of this nature always have the misconception that they are more intelligent than the rest of us. John, even though it may take a little bit longer, despite the fact that they are under the impression that they are able to conceal their adultery from their partner as well as the rest of the world, they are completely unaware that their behavior is predictable and relatively simple to trace. I didn't make any statements. Don't give up, boss. You made it this far. Gary said that everything will turn out well in the end, irrespective of the manner in which it is handled. Yeah, I will do that, I said. On the other hand, I did not believe it. When I looked into the future, all I could see was a black pit filled with shame and agony for both my son and me. This was going to give him a great deal of emotional distress, and I hadn't even begun to think about it. All right, John, Please give me a call if there is anything you require my assistance with. All right? Talk to me, even if it's simply a verbal exchange. All right? My cell phone has an off button, and I told him that I would press it immediately to record any further communications that might have taken place between my beloved wife and whoever it was that she was deceiving. I reactivated the intercept device. That night, I slept in a guest bedroom located down the hall and informed Megan that I was suffering from a dry throat and some congestion that could perhaps cause me to snore severely. This was a swift and unremarkable agreement from her. I also told her that it would be closer to Ben if he might require one of us in the night. On top of that, the fact that our young child had soiled the bed a couple of times the previous week was news to Megan, but she shrugged her shoulders and went back to reading her magazine. Despite the fact that I noticed the emotional difficulties that our son was going through, Megan did not seem to be affected by it. A preliminary report was brought to my attention by Gary. It was Mike Collins who was Megan's lover. The following afternoon, at the same workplace where Megan worked, there was one of the former spouses who worked in marketing. In addition to Megan, he was one of the 3 supervisors of the division. He had a daughter who was 8 years old and a son who was 10 years old. He was married up to that point. Stephanie, his wife, worked as a part-time real estate agent in an office located on the opposite side of town. I was 34 years old, and Mike was a little taller than I was, but he was quite a bit thinner. When I was in my early teens, I participated in amateur boxing. Concurrently, I began weight training to enhance the power of my upper body and the endurance of my legs. Despite the fact that I stopped boxing when I went to college, I continued to lift weights on a number of occasions each week. Based on the one photograph that Gary had discovered up to this point, it seemed as though Mr. Collins was more of a runner, if he was even an athlete at all. Although I was unaware of what women thought to be handsome, I had a hunch that he would be attractive to the average woman, but not particularly so in general. Honestly, I wasn't all that impressed. I wasn't sure it was because of him that Megan would be tempted to disobey our wedding vows in such a blatant manner and meet to have sexual relations with this guy. Gary had bribed a contact he had with the phone company to obtain a complete 2-year history of Megan's phone records, and some of his employees had rapidly gone through them. Initially, there were only a few phone calls between the two, and they were made at times that were very far apart. According to the findings of the first analysis, the calls had started to become a weekly occurrence a little less than 4 months ago, and soon they became a daily occurrence instead. Currently, they were happening 2 or 3 times a day, most frequently in the wee hours of the morning or late at night. Gary was aware of the time that I arrived at work, and he informed me that the two were having a conversation when I left the house in the morning almost every single time. The calls that took place in the evening were virtually always initiated by Megan, and they were unquestionably made at times when Megan could be certain I wouldn't overharpably when I was working out in the basement with Ben keeping me company. When it came to my typical workout periods, the timing was just about perfect. Have you any information that you might share with me regarding what took place around the time when the number of phone calls started to increase? Gary inquired about it. He was acting in a very businesslike manner, and I admired that. From my perspective, it made the process of dealing with it a little bit easier. When Gary noticed that I was beginning to relax a little bit, he joined me in doing the same thing. On the other side of the desk, I sat back in my chair to ponder, and I even rested my feet up on the near center corner of my desk. It dawned on me all of a sudden, or perhaps not at all. A couple of weeks prior to that, she attended a training conference in Los Angeles with a corporation that had engaged her firm to audit their financial records. The seminar was provided by the company, I stated with apprehension. I was able to recall more of it as I continued to think about it. As I mentioned earlier, during the time that I was pausing, a piece of a memory began to form into something that I could visualize in my head. During that time, I accompanied Megan to the airport. It was a sluggish voice. This other individual was also present, and he was boarding the same plane. I can recall it as clearly as a trumpet. "All right," said Gary with self-assurance. "Despite the fact that I will have my team continue their search for another nexus, I believe that we will discover that the seminar was the initial event that led to this entire disaster. Quite a few indicators are pointing in that direction." I gave a slight nod. Even though I am a man, I do not believe in the concept of coincidences. Gary checked his notepad. "That's all for the time being, boss," he stated. "A digital copy of all the action that occurred over the course of the previous year was emailed to us by the credit card issuers. The fact that you and Megan have jointly created accounts on each of them is beneficial. They'll remind you of that later today. We will also be looking at your bank records to determine whether there is anything unusual. I will keep you updated on what we discover next, all right? The amount of material that had already been amassed, both in terms of its breadth and depth, left an impression on me. It had only been a little over 3 days since they had begun working on the case. What was your method for obtaining all of that without my permission? I inquired. I pondered whether it was truly appropriate for me to raise a fuss with the banks and phone providers about the ease with which they released private information. Gary wore a grin. What do you think about all of that? He replied with a hint of humor. I allowed my eyebrows to raise in a curious manner. It was a chuckle in the event that Denise places a pile of documents in front of you, boss. You have no idea what you are signing, he joked. I managed to smile, though it barely stayed on my face. When I was younger, I used to say I trusted Denise even more than I trusted my wife. Now, Denise held the top spot without contest. All right. I raised my hands in a gesture of submission. Proceed to engage in combat with the malevolent individuals and females, I said dryly. Gary and his team had amassed a big mountain of information about my wife and her new partner. Several detectives had been dispatched to Los Angeles, and they'd already turned up half a dozen people at the company organizing the seminars who remembered Megan and Mike as being quite close before they learned that they had different last names. One of the desk clerks who had witnessed most of their behavior had assumed they were married to each other. A further 3 or 4 others who were staying at the hotel where Megan and Mike stayed described them as frequent visitors to the lounge, where they appeared to consume a significant amount of alcohol. Apparently, they would stumblingly make their way to the elevator and then ascend to either one of their rooms. On 2 separate occasions, the management of the lounge had to request they reduce the risky behavior they were engaging in during the early hours of the morning. 2 investigators working for Gary stated they were in the process of negotiating with the hotel management to determine whether the security camera tapes from that time were still available and whether they could be obtained for a cost that was reasonable. That was a euphemism for an underhanded exchange of recordings for cash, Gary explained to me with a grin. He was referring to the transaction. I gave a slight nod at the way he spoke. I understood that his freelance operative had been called in for a brief assignment in Megan's office earlier than planned, and she was already reporting that Mike and Megan were an item around the office. This was a significant development. It would appear their shared employer was aware of the situation as well, and he had cautioned them multiple times to keep their affair confidential within the office. According to the information provided, Megan had previously lost a merit raise on her income due to a poor performance review that was based on her behavior. I stored the information in my memory. My attorney, Patrick, would be interested in hearing about a company that didn't take significant action to prevent obvious violations of the morals clauses in its employee contracts. While working in the payroll department, the freelancer had already received copies of Megan and Mr. Collins' pay records, as well as information regarding their time and attendance. At first glance, it seemed as though the dynamic duo was scheduling meetings for 1 or 2 afternoons per week. The credit card information that Gary received from our bank revealed that it appeared Mike was also a slacker. This was due to the fact that Megan paid for most of the rooms at an economy hotel located on the outskirts of town. To me, that was a clear sign of how cheap and pathetic this affair was. Even a decent hotel in the downtown area was beyond their budget or taste. The small circle of girlfriends Megan claimed she was meeting for nights out was mostly made up of women who had just divorced or were unmarried and definitely looking for men. All of them, except a woman named Linda, had taken an oath to Megan to keep the affair secret. We conveyed a great deal of information to Gary's investigators while also speaking quickly. It was all that was required for most of them to provide dates, locations, and even estimated times when Megan and Mike would hook up. All it needed was 200. Oddly enough, as of late, even that work of fiction had been rejected. Over the past 2 months, most of the women had not seen Megan. Linda called Megan immediately and warned her that someone had been asking about her, trying to confirm her whereabouts. Megan had no clue who, but of course, she had her suspicions. Megan was adamant that she had not disclosed even the slightest detail about the situation. Linda believed it was ridiculous, vindictive, and cruel of me to be checking up on Megan, a close friend of hers. The assumption Linda made was logical. She correctly guessed it was me. Linda, of course, had a great deal of experience in things like this, but her knowledge was still lacking. Investigating Linda's history revealed she had been divorced twice before due to her husband's cheating. Additionally, the second divorce came after her new husband discovered her with the plumber. Linda was a woman who had wandered from man to man throughout her life. She was identified as a correspondent in divorce lawsuits on 2 separate occasions, both involving her seducing married men. Despite not working in the same office, this woman had somehow become involved in the same group as my wife. At the very least, it appeared Linda was supporting the affair simply because she could. We were aware that Gary had cloned Megan's mobile phone, which was the reason the bribes of $200 remained with the other women. Linda had assured Megan they wouldn't give her up, and the other women responded to Megan's panicked calls with reassurances they would stay loyal. The only thing Megan knew was that someone had been asking questions, but she believed her friends were protecting her. I was once again astounded by the amount of information Gary's operation had produced in such a short time, both in terms of quality and quantity. It goes without saying that Mike and Megan were amateurs, while Gary was the consummate professional. There was no way Mike and Megan could win. The following weeks were relatively quiet in our household. Megan canceled nearly all of her nights out except for Fridays. She would come home early, and things seemed calm, but I knew it wasn't over. The other days of that week, as well as the following 2, were relatively peaceful in our house. The ladies went out to a couple of clubs and danced for a time with pretty much anyone who asked. According to Gary's representatives, who confirmed that Megan had canceled virtually all of her plans for a night out on the town except for Friday, she was keeping a low profile. After that, everyone went straight back to their homes. Mike, on the other hand, was a different story. He was a gentleman who stayed at home with his wife and kids, at least for a while. I heard a report claiming Mike's wife wasn't all that thrilled to have him around so much, and she had been rather vocal while questioning his abrupt change of behavior. I discovered this information through the investigators. I was really taken aback by how quickly and effectively questioning Megan's girlfriends had such a significant impact. On the other hand, I received the distinct impression that Megan and Mike's attitude toward me was characterized by a certain degree of arrogance. They had been running strong for such a long time, and it seemed like they felt invincible. Whatever it was, they were confident I had no clue. Shortly after 3 weeks had passed since the detectives had made contact with the party, the mobile phone intercepts that took place on Friday nights became more frequent and explicit. Both of the cheating spouses had come to the conclusion that everything had been resolved, and they also assumed I had reached the conclusion that nothing was going on during this period. By then, I was nearly completely sleeping in the spare bedroom. When I tried to kiss Megan on the cheek, I could hardly stand it. Upon my return home in the evening, I realized there was no way I could ever have a physical relationship with her again. She hinted a few times that she was available for some passionate sex, but I chose to ignore her. I read every book that Ben had in his small collection, and after I had perfected a hard-sounding dry cough, I went out and purchased more books for us to read together. There was no doubt in Megan's mind why I was sleeping apart from her. However, she never once mentioned that I should avoid being around Ben while I was coughing like that. Meanwhile, Gary and his team noticed that the number of late-night calls between Megan and Mike on their cell phones had significantly increased. The meeting between Megan and Mike was scheduled to take place at their typical low-cost motel on the Thursday of the 3rd week. Gary's team had everything in place. We were eagerly anticipating the opportunity to gather evidence on the adulterers, and Patrick, my attorney, had me prepared and ready to take action. I was able to secure the services of Jenny, a 16-year-old from the neighborhood, to watch Ben that evening. "Megan, please don't go out tonight," I pleaded with her as she was getting ready to leave the house. I stood in the living room, watching her with a mixture of sadness and frustration. "I begged you, Megan. Please don't do this," I said, my voice filled with emotion. She stopped and gave me an annoyed look. "Look, there's nothing going on, John. I'm just going out for a couple of drinks and maybe some dancing," she said with a tone that suggested she thought I was overreacting. Her face had that butter wouldn't melt in my mouth look. I tried one last time. "I know you're going to meet someone tonight. You can't possibly mean as much to him as you do to Ben and me. Please, Megan, stay here." Her face changed slightly, as if a hint of suspicion crept in. "What the hell are you talking about, John?" she asked, her voice tinged with irritation. Are you angry? I paused, then replied, I know you're having an affair. You're not only doing this to me, but to Ben as well. We don't deserve this. Megan's expression softened just a bit, and I could tell she was processing what I had just said. Clearly, her line of reasoning was that if I didn't reveal a name, I had nothing but suspicions. I'm not cheating on you, John, she said forcefully. I'm getting tired of all these accusations, and it's high time we put an end to them. Her voice was sharp now. If you keep this up, I might go out and hire some random guy to take care of my needs, just to prove it to you, she snapped. I turned my gaze away, trying to calm myself. If she had seen the sudden rage in my eyes, I would have blown everything. Megan, I said quietly, this is broken. She glared at me with cold eyes. Not another damned word, she hissed. I have never cheated. Am not now, and I never will. There. Does that satisfy your rage? She snapped, throwing on a light jacket. I noticed she wasn't wearing a bra, and her miniskirt left little to the imagination. Megan, I said, my voice calm but firm, there will be no more marriage between us if you cheat on me. You know that, right? She paused briefly, her hand on the doorknob. I told you, she said with controlled fury. I have no desire for any man but you, and I never will. She opened the door and left without looking back at me. 20 minutes later, I joined Gary and 3 of his best investigators in a room next to where Mike and Megan would soon meet. A little terrified by my confrontation earlier, as well as the suspicious questioning of Megan's friends in recent weeks, I was there to witness what would happen next. It appeared Mike and Megan were driving around aimlessly, looking for any sign of being followed. The GPS devices alerted us that, in reality, they weren't being followed by anyone. Just minutes after they arrived at the motel, Gary received a call from the front desk clerk, who had been paid a few $100s to inform us when they checked in. Thanks to the GPS trackers, we knew exactly where they were heading. There was no need to tail them closely. The devices would tell us everything we needed. Mike and Megan arrived at the motel in their separate cars about 5 minutes apart. After receiving confirmation from the desk clerk, Gary and I drove to a secluded area of the parking lot and watched from a distance. We could see them meet at the front desk, get a room key, and quickly make their way up to a room on the second floor. Megan stood near the door while Mike followed behind her. Gary's team had arranged for 2 detectives to dash down the hall and film their entry into the room as soon as the door opened. Their high-tech listening equipment was already picking up sounds from inside. My heart pounded in my chest as I listened. The evidence was there, the moment of truth had arrived, and my worst fears were about to be confirmed. We had 3 cameras positioned to capture the exact moment they went into the room together. My attorney, Patrick, had assured me that this documentation would be irrefutable proof of Megan's betrayal. Even though we had originally planned to barge in before they started, I insisted on waiting until they had begun their night of passion. I needed to witness it all, even if it would tear me apart. I let them get comfortable, set the scene, and indulge in whatever sordid behavior they had planned. Every laugh, every sound, every breath was like a knife to my heart. Megan was eager, more eager than I had ever seen her. She was asking Mike to do things I'd never imagined. As they started, I clenched my fists, barely able to contain my fury. When I heard Megan ask Mike to spank her, I nearly lost it. I couldn't take it anymore. Give me the key, I demanded, my voice barely steady as I turned to Gary. I had obtained a spare key from the motel owner earlier in the day, anticipating this moment. I stormed toward the door and unlocked it in one swift motion. The look on Mike's face as I opened the door was priceless. He tried to jump off Megan, so quickly he almost injured himself. He had no idea who I was at first, but when he realized, his face turned white. In a desperate attempt to defend himself, he lunged at me. Bad move. I sidestepped his charge, causing him to stumble off balance. Then, with a powerful right hook, I knocked him out cold on the bed. Megan, still lying on the bed in shock, screamed in pure rage and humiliation. Gary and 2 detectives quickly entered the room and restrained her, holding her arms as she tried to struggle free. Even in that moment, she looked at me with defiance, as if she still thought she could escape the situation unscathed. Mike, for his part, cowered under the covers, trembling in fear. There was no fight left in him, and he seemed to accept his defeat. Megan, on the other hand, was trying to process how her affair had been uncovered so thoroughly. She had no idea how many people were involved in revealing the truth, and now it was all crumbling down around her. She tried to appeal to me, saying, "John, let me explain. This isn't what it looks like." But I wasn't having it. "You've had plenty of time to explain, Megan," I said coldly. "Now, you'll have to explain this to Ben." I turned my back on her as Gary's team secured the room and began documenting everything for the divorce proceedings. Patrick would have a field day with this. With the photos, video footage, and recordings, Megan wouldn't be able to claim innocence. That night was the final straw. I had held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, Megan would come to her senses. But now, all hope was gone. For 2 weeks, Gary held on to the hotel tapes for safekeeping. I instructed him to preserve them for the divorce case and to use them as leverage in ensuring that Megan didn't try to take advantage of the situation. Patrick was confident that Megan's flagrant violation of her morals clause at work would also spell the end of her career. He anticipated that as soon as her boss found out, she'd be fired. In the end, Megan tried to downplay the whole situation. She packed up most of her personal belongings and left after a few half-hearted attempts to win me over. She apologized, but it was empty, meaningless. She chose her lover, and that was the last nail in the coffin. Patrick and I were relentless in the divorce proceedings. Megan had no chance to contest it. I kept custody of Ben, retained the house, and most of our assets. Megan, on the other hand, was left with little more than her personal effects and a small amount of cash. Her affair had cost her everything. Ben was confused and hurt by the situation. He didn't understand why his mom wasn't around anymore, and I did everything I could to shield him from the ugly truth. We spent as much time together as possible, playing games, reading books, and going to the park. I wanted him to know that no matter what, I was always going to be there for him. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Megan's career never recovered. Her firm had fired her after the tapes and phone records became public. She had gambled everything for a fling, and now she had nothing. As for me, I moved on. It wasn't easy, but I threw myself into raising Ben and focusing on my work. Slowly, the wounds healed. Eventually, I started dating again, but this time I was much more cautious. I looked for someone who understood the importance of loyalty and trust, determined never to experience the same heartache again. One day, years later, I ran into Megan at a grocery store. She looked worn out and tired, a shadow of the woman I once knew. She tried to strike up a conversation, but I kept it short. There was nothing left to say. She had made her choices, and I had moved on. I walked away feeling a sense of closure, knowing that chapter of my life was truly over. Ben grew up into a smart, kind young man. I couldn't have been prouder. He never knew the full extent of what had happened, and I made sure he didn't carry the burden of his mother's choices. All he needed to know was that I loved him, and I would always be there for him. In the end, life went on. I realized that people make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes cost them everything. But it's how we pick up the pieces and move forward that defines us. I had been through hell, but I came out the other side stronger and more determined than ever. Thanks for watching this intense story of betrayal and heartbreak. Do you think the husband made the right decision by confronting his wife and moving on? Or should he have handled it differently? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you in the next video.